Lloyd Frontera thinks yet nope, if that bridge collapses. In the Night of Blood and Iron, there's a scene where the royal army and the rebels face off at the Maitner River. He reflects on an event during a massive rainstorm where the bridge collapses, leading to a standstill. However, he refrains from mentioning future events. She instructs him to express his opinion. In response, he states that he would like to inquire something from the official seated beside the guild leader and asks how much they were paid. Another man exclaims how he dared make such false accusations in front of Her Royal Highness. Lloyd Frontera believes that his reaction speaks volumes. It's as if he is displaying signs of being paid off all over his face. He thinks that anyone familiar with Koreans knows what typically occurs when a politician and a businessman meet. Either the politician accepts money from the businessman, or the businessman bribes the politician while seeking favors. In this case, he believes it's the latter, stripping away all business rights and monopolizing the budget. She calls him again, bringing him out of his thoughts, and she asserts that she thought he was a clever man, but he has made a grave mistake by baselessly accusing a royal official. She shouts, "Listen, prepare his judgment at once." They capture him, tie him up, and the Death Warrior is almost killing him. She instructs him to listen well, as he has insulted her and a royal vassal with his lies, and now she will restore her honor. Javier arrives with Pipodong, Taming, and Bangul, grabbing his sword. Alicia Termina Magentano asks him if he has any last words. He replies, exterminate the guilty one's entire bloodline. She asks Victor and the other person if they also agree with this. They bow and affirm that it is the right thing to do. She then declares that she will prove her vassal's innocence while Javier squeezes his sword to draw it. The other person questions what she is saying, and 4 magicians arrive to perform a magic spell on that person. Lloyd Frontera looks at him and smiles while she instructs them to summon the confession spell. The person pleads for them to wait, but the magicians have already completed their spell, and magical circles appear around him with a bright flash. After a while, that person and Victor find themselves tied up in the middle of the city under worse conditions, with crows flying around their heads. Lloyd Frontera arrives there with Javier and remarks that their families have done no wrong. He explains that he pleaded with the Queen to only go this far, emphasizing his niceness. Lloyd thinks he was a bit annoyed that construction got delayed due to those worthless punks. Alicia Termina Magentano also arrives there and commands to put all of the kingdom's workers on the bridge's construction, making people hail their darling queen. Lloyd observes that the High Wizard used gravitational magic to lighten the weight of the stone blocks and work on the suspension tower, which finished in a flash. He instructs Bangul to get ready for the launch. Bangul holds the rope in his mouth and jumps from a building, and Lloyd tells him to fire. A blast occurs, catching everyone's attention. Pipodong and Bangul become excited by the blast, while 2 soldiers turn the tab again. Lloyd Frontera announces the socket connection complete, and here comes the second cable. Julian Frontera acknowledges Lloyd's incredible abilities, and Javier adds that he is also remarkable. Despite it being his first time engaging in hard labor, Lloyd showed up every day. Javier recalls a time when they were young, and he asked Lloyd to teach him how to use a sword. However, Lloyd nearly hurt himself because the sword was too heavy for him. Now, Javier observes that it doesn't seem to be a problem. Hemming supports a part of the bridge, and Lloyd Frontera mentions that wizards can also perform fire magic. Following his instructions, they execute the magic, and Lloyd places his shovel on the ground, announcing that the construction is complete. The system notifies that the construction of Magenta City's suspension bridge is finished, and a large amount of bonus RP will be awarded for this monumental achievement in construction. His bonus RP increases to 1,050, and his current RP reaches 3,019. He reflects that after saving bit by bit, he is now swimming in RP, feeling content. Alicia Termina Magentano reaches the bridge and declares that it will be named after Lloyd Frontera and his brave knight. She officially names the bridge Lojavi and, using her vested powers, bestows the title of Master Builder onto Lloyd Frontera. Corgetus, standing in the crowd, questions the decision, referring to Lloyd as a runt who made the whole platform but is the only one capable of designing something like this. He acknowledges that once the money for construction starts pouring in, it will likely settle the estate's debts. However, there is still one giant hurdle left. She contemplates how to utilize this man, considering there are numerous ways to put him to use. He reflects that the Queen is currently debating how to employ him, but he absolutely refuses to comply. His dream is to be a rich bum, spending his days eating and sleeping. He decides to stick to the plan. She states that she has a request for him, suggesting they return to the royal palace and talk. He thinks about escaping the queen's grip while also addressing Julian's academy problem and responds, agreeing to her wishes. He names the plan Operation Double Kill. They all return to the royal palace where Alicia Termina Magentano proclaims that she hereby bestows upon Lloyd Frontera a noble title and an estate befitting his abilities. She contemplates that he is the son of a country baron, and on top of that, he caused the sanction of high-ranking officials like themselves. They cannot be happy about him being given a title and land, and it will be a pain to try and quell their complaints. Lloyd Frontera bows and expresses thanks and praise for Her Majesty's boundless generosity. However, if he may be so bold, he beseeches her for something bigger. She asks what's bigger, and he replies that if Her Majesty deems his request reasonable, then please withdraw the offer of land and title. She tells him to state his request, and she will decide, contemplating what he might want, whether a royal post or a larger fee. Whatever it is, it wouldn't change her desire to have him by her side. He states that what he would like is a thorough cleaning of the Royal Academy. She asks him to explain this. He responds that the Magenta Royal Academy is currently full of corruption, inequality, and despicable behavior. Students focus more on their cliques than their studies and subject students of lower ranks to mental and physical suffering. He mentions that the Academy's educators are aware of this, yet turn a blind eye, more interested in lining their pockets with kickbacks to satisfy their own interests. He adds that the students indulge themselves in the sweetness of power when they should be learning, and they build up social barriers when they should be embracing their aspirations for this world. These behaviors are a far cry from the aims with which the Academy was established. He issues an order to Javier, who takes out a document from his pocket and presents it to the Queen. He states that these are the results of a 4-month investigation that his knight and he have put together, ranging from Academy graduates to handymen who did odd jobs, down to the teachers with a conscience who had left, fed up with the Academy's corruption. He mentions that they have carefully recorded their testimonies and investigated their claims. A royal servant shouts that this lowly man is spewing lies, and another person chimes in, saying that such a thing could not happen at the Royal Academy. She orders those who just opened their traps to be subjected to the confession spell. Magicians arrive and create their magic circles with a bright flash on Academy administrators, and they all confess. After some time, they are all tied up in worse conditions in the middle of the city for punishment. Alicia Termina Magentano reaches the Royal Academy, while an announcement tells that Her Majesty is approaching, and her guards capture the staff of the Academy. She orders the arrest of all the people mentioned on the list, with no exceptions, even those they associate with or have the slightest connection to. She instructs that they should be given lashes according to their crime, relieved of their posts, and have their lands confiscated. She states that they should be prepared to face even execution. One of them claims he has done no wrong, while another one begs for mercy. Another person insists he is being framed, declaring it to be a setup. Lloyd Frontera and Javier stand outside the Academy, and he smiles while Javier remarks that he seems very pleased about cleaning out the Academy. He wonders what he is talking about. His darling queen has completely forgotten he exists. Now he just needs to sneak back to the countryside and enjoy the fruits of his labor, laughing. Kyle comes from behind and says he understands that he is pleased, but must he make that face? He adds that he has a message from Her Royal Highness, stating that he may go when he wishes, but he should be sure to attend tomorrow night's banquet. He agrees to that. Kyle continues, mentioning that she also says his plan to create a diversion with the Academy was outstanding, and she respects his wish to live the sweet, lazy life. He thinks that he was always in the palm of her hand. Kyle concludes that is all and walks away. After he goes away, he says that he scared the crap out of him and asks if he couldn't sense that guy approaching. Javier replies not at all and adds that Sir Kyle, the kingdom's top sword master, hiding his presence from a knight of his level would have been very easy. After a while, Julian Frontera is heard saying that Lloyd Frontera beat up Diego Lacona, knowing all this would happen. Lloyd replies well, basically, he planned to wrap up the construction ordered by the Queen nicely. He then adds that if she were going to give him a bonus, he would ask her to investigate the Academy. He claims to have her trust, a justification for it, and he knew it would work. Lloyd asks his brother what he wants, calling him a little shit. His brother responds that he doesn't have to force himself to call him that anymore because he's his brother. He expresses trust and pride and declares that he's proud of him more than anyone else. Julian is surprised to hear this, and the system notifies him that Julian Frontra now thinks of him as the hero who awoke to face the family's crisis. Resentment towards him has faded, and he now respects and accepts him. The system notifies him once again that his approval rating by Julian has increased by 65 points, and he has reached 910 bonus RP, with his current RP being 3,929. He comments that it was so cringe he's going to vomit. His brother agrees, saying he regrets it too. At night, they attend the royal banquet, where the queen instructs Lloyd Frontra to come and draw near. He complies and approaches her. She questions whether he thought she wouldn't notice he liked that, and remarks that he looks like a mole cricket, standing out even more. He denies it, addressing her as Her Majesty and stating that he did not think so. Javier interjects, expressing awe at Her Highness's insight. The Queen then asks if Javier Asrahan agrees, while Lloyd Frontra looks at both of them. Javier confirms, describing him as a mole cricket indeed, to which the Queen replies most definitely, a mole cricket. He wonders what has suddenly come over him and why he looks so relieved. She inquires if he did not hear her command to draw near. He bows and apologizes, and she insists on him coming even closer. He stands in front of her face, and she continues to ask him to come even closer. He apologizes again, stating that if he gets any closer, it's not good. She leans in near his ear and mentions that if he ever changes his mind, he should come to see her, and she'll have everything ready for him. She walks away, informing him that the banquet is for him and that he should enjoy himself. He smiles and reflects on what a jackpot this is. He contemplates lounging around, but then considers the possibility of a natural disaster putting the estate in trouble, prompting him to work to keep it going. He becomes more excited, thinking it's like he has acquired a nice little nest egg, and he wants to get back to the estate already with the enormous fee he received from the construction. Now it's time to live his life, and he dances and enjoys food. However, he pauses, realizing there's still the plot point 3 years later regarding the queen turning evil. When that happens, the nest egg and the estate will be in vain. He mentions that the banquet will continue until the moon sets, and he recalls that line, it's from when the queen is poisoned and loses one of her arms. It's the secret code used by those plotting to assassinate her. He wonders why this is happening now, and why is it coming from Sir Kyle when it's not supposed to happen for another 3 years. Alicia Termino Magentano sits in her room and wonders if he has too much to drink. She is certain she has had her usual amount, but acknowledges that she has been working too hard these past few days with the Academy, preparing for the floor and the movements of Javier Asrahan, their enemy state. She reflects on Samar Khan assembling an army in his western lands, but according to her spies, it wasn't just a military exercise. She questions whether it's an invasion, deeming it unlikely as, if that were his goal, he would have assembled his men in the north where their borders meet. She thinks marching through that wild terrain is a suicide mission, pondering what exactly he is scheming, and she feels a severe headache. She finds it odd that her body's mana should easily neutralize the effects of this much alcohol. She realizes she can't control her heartbeat and notes that it's becoming hard to breathe. Meanwhile, she considers her mana, realizing she needs to circulate it to neutralize her heart while she bends over the table. She suspects it's poison, but all the food is thoroughly checked. Trying to get up, she calls out if someone is out there and requests anyone to fetch the royal doctor. Sir Kyle opens the door and she looks at him and says thank goodness need, asking for his hand. He responds affirmatively, acknowledging that Her Majesty is right, and he expresses gratitude for being there to help her rest in peace. He then takes out his sword, leaving her looking at him surprisingly. On the other side, Lloyd Frontra informs Javier that there's a problem and suggests they go. They both walk towards the Queen's room, and he asks if Javier isn't going to inquire about what's happening. Javier responds that he also felt a strange mana force and asks what he needs to do. Lloyd instructs him to knock out the Sword Master. Javier acknowledges that he knows he is not kidding, but he pleads with him not to joke. The other person suggests buying them some time, and Javier asks for 1 minute. The person replies within 2 minutes, and they both run quickly. He agrees, saying he'll take it, and urges them to see the dead royal servants. Sir Kyle launches an attack on Alicia Termina Magentano, and she successfully blocks his strike. He commends her, stating it's magnificent. He informs her that she has had a lethal dose of poison, yet she managed to block 3 strikes by his blade. She questions why he is doing this, falls down, and he almost attacks her. However, Javier reaches there in time and stops him with a stick. Sir Kyle then turned his attack towards Javier, who also successfully blocked the strike. Sir Kyle considers that he blocked his sword with a candlestick and questions what in the world is happening. He thinks of a high-frequency mana circle collision. Javier throws him away, and Kyle reflects that he has never seen mana used like that before. They both continue to attack each other repeatedly and eventually defeat each other. Sir Kyle addresses Alicia Termina Magentano as Her Royal Wallet Highness, and she asks Lloyd Frontrow what he is doing there. He responds, urging her to save the chit-chat for later. He then employs Asrahan's core technique and mana absorption, casting a spell on the queen to save her life. In the midst of the fight between Javier and Sir Kyle, Javier contemplates the aura sword, recognizing that only a sword master can conjure it. He decides that once he finishes conjuring it, it'll be all over. He throws a candlestick in the air, spins it, and attacks Kyle. Javier also uses a mana blast for an attack. Kyle acknowledges the ingenuity of the young man and his technique in manipulating mana, but notes that he lacks real-life combat experience. Kyle attacks Javier, and Lloyd Frontrow becomes upset, thinking that he's counting on him because if he loses, they're all dead. Javier assesses the wound as shallow, but he acknowledges that he has certainly dealt some damage. Now it's time for his attack, and he runs to engage him. Sir Kyle looks at him, thinking that he's charging at him, a senseless fool who fears nothing. Kyle kicks Javier, who screams Master Pipodong. Pipodong quickly arrives and throws his sword towards Kyle. Javier grabs his sword and candlestick in both hands. Kyle attempts to attack him again, but Javier quickly uses a mana blast, throwing a fire attack on Kyle and tossing him out of the room. Kyle thinks it's unbelievable that he can use that like a cannon. Javier continues to run and attack him, using a mana blast once again, a scattering blast. Kyle thinks to himself, damn it, he is a monster. Meanwhile, Lloyd Frontrow employs his skills to heal the queen. After some time, she opens her eyes and wonders how it is possible. She observes that he is absorbing his mana, but not only that, he is specifically absorbing the mana that was consumed by the poison. She asks where he acquired such a skill. He replies, please don't talk, he can't concentrate. She apologizes and then wonders if he just scolded her, the queen. He denies it, suggesting that it appears the poison has affected her hearing. She questions what this is, expressing doubt. He apologizes again and urges her to stay still and rest. He coughs with blood, making her wonder what he is doing, and she asks if he is trying to sacrifice himself to save her. On the other side, Javier attacks Kyle with full force and throws him into the banquet. People become scared and ask what this is as Kyle slides away. Javier walks towards him, thinking he will not get past him here. Kyle believes he's going to defend that one spot to buy some time and orders the soldiers to listen up, stating that this man and his gang have conspired to assassinate the queen. The soldiers ready their weapons to protect their majesty. Guards run to attack Javier, and he counterattacks, throwing them away. Kyle reflects on each member of the elite guard, noting that he's flinging them away 3 at a time. He thinks he has never heard of such a man in all of history who could do such a thing. If he were to attain sword master status, he would easily have the power to destroy a small nation, but he believes that will never happen. Kyle commands the soldiers to step aside, declaring that he is his now, thinking he will die here. He uses his aura sword and throws Javier away. Javier is severely injured, falls, and his clothes tear, leaving him badly hurt. Lloyd Frontrow acknowledges that the poison absorption is complete, but he also feels weak and vomits poison. Alicia Termina Magentano gets up and states that if they don't do something, he will die. She suggests gathering all the mana into one arm, and she will assist him. Javier thinks that she will sever his arm, similar to what she did to herself in the novel, but he refuses to accept losing an arm. He contemplates that it will make shoveling difficult, picks up a fork, shouts mana blast, and an explosion occurs, destroying the palace roof from his side. Javier remains on the ground in severe condition, and Kyle walks towards him, pondering what that was. It felt like a huge explosion of mana. He wonders if it could have been Lloyd Frontrow. Javier attempts to get up, and Kyle looks at him, thinking that he rises even after being hit by the blow of the aura sword. He contemplates Javier's sword oath and grabs his broken sword, determined to keep that oath. In a flashback, Javier remembers when they both sat down in the woods at their construction site. Lloyd Frontrow asks what this is all of a sudden. Javier explains that he is supposed to be his guard, yet he abandons his duties and runs to the Gigatidon, expressing disappointment when he would not join him. Javier mentions that he had wanted to rely on him because, up until that moment, he always had due to his soft attitude. Javier acknowledges that his lack of strength leads to the negligence of his duties, and he believes he is entirely unfit to be a knight. Lloyd Fronterer responds that he sees. He was wondering what he was talking about. He advises Javier not to get too worked up about it and mentions that he will still dock his pay for 6 months. Javier questions if he honestly thinks he can negotiate this. Javier suggests 3 months, but Lloyd Fronterer asks why he asks. Javier refuses and apologizes, swearing to him as his lord's sword and escort that he will never again abandon his duties. Lloyd Fronterer remarks that Javier is playing with the embers while saying it, questioning how he can believe him. Javier asserts that he doesn't have to believe him because he will keep this oath. Lloyd Fronterer agrees, saying fine as he wishes. Javier mentions that he is aware that he has risen to the level of the Triple Heart Circle and emphasizes the urgency to become a sword master within the year. Lloyd Fronterer responds, saying those are some mighty words, remarking that it's as if he's going to lose 12 pounds this year, really. Javier retorts, stating that just because he says it doesn't mean it will happen. He takes a small stick from the ground and asks about the human limit to how far they can push their mana heart. In theory, they will never surpass that limit, even for hundreds of years. He scratches a circle on the ground and explains how a sword master is able to surpass that limit, suggesting it isn't through simple training, but what he is doing. Lloyd Fronterer acknowledges that this time Javier would like to do this without his help, and he thinks Javier will not rely on Master Lloyd anymore. He comes back in, and Kyle runs to attack him. He thinks he will become a sword master on his own, and Kyle stabs him. Kyle remarks that he never ceases to amaze him, noting that normally one's whole body would be torn to shreds and disappear when hit by the aura sword. He questions if Javier gathered all his mana into one spot to strengthen it. He expresses that he would have loved to see more of Javier's little tricks, but now he must die. Javier gathers all his skills and creates a magical circle. He grabs Kyle's hand and attempts to take out his sword. He thinks the mana from the aura is burning his entire body, flowing in through his sword from his hands, from his heart, from his mana heart. He goes back and hits a wall, falling down. Kyle observes that he senses neither breathing nor mana from him, and thinks this has taken up too much of his time. Now he turns to take the queen's head and walks away. Javier gets up again and says he sees now, while Kyle looks at him and shockingly asks what he is. Javier replies that it's the sword master's mana and builds his strong sword. Kyle thinks that that is an aura sword. He has never even heard of such a power like this. Javier attacks him and cuts his arm, causing Kyle to shout in pain and fall down. He orders his soldiers to step forward. Javier asks if they think they can take on this sword master.